You're about to see a story crafted for years crumble in seconds. That is exactly what happened when Tucker Carlson's one-pointed question undid a guest's shallow moralizing on immigration, and it's a clip that remains a standout moment from Tucker's entire career at Fox News. Julissa Arkay built her story as a tale of a helpless 11-year-old migrant eventually making it big by going to become the VP at Goldman Sachs to then use that to lend her authority on the topic of illegal immigration. But apart from that caveat to that story that you'll see later on, there were some absurd allegations of her racism in America immigration policy at the same time flying in the face of facts and her own life story. Take a look at this.
There may be things about this plan you don't like. There are definitely things that I don't like about it. But it's hard to see how a plan that gives legalization, amnesty, and a path to citizenship for more than 2 million people here illegally, none of them white, is white supremacy. How does that work?
Well, I think we have to take a step back and look at this from the beginning. The reason why we're in this chaos situation of young people's lives being on the line is because the president rescinded DACA, the program that gave undocumented young people the ability to work and go to school and drive and pay taxes. He ended that program, and that is why we're in this situation.
This is a response that left me scratching my head. The Path to Citizenship proposal in 2018 for the 1.8 million undocumented young migrants, also called Dreamers, were perhaps the biggest concession to the Democrats on the issue in a decade. And that too under someone you'd least expect it from, which is Donald Trump.
It's been out there for a long time. These are good people. These are people that should be able to stay in this country.
More than 70% of those undocumented migrants were from Mexico, with some others from the rest of the American continent and even Asia, despite the temporary ease brought by the DACA programs for migrants brought in as children. There was no thing as a path to eventual citizenship. Granted, there were provisions in the proposals to stop what's sometimes called chain migration, limiting if relatives or parents of young people brought into the country can also become citizens, but that would be a position that's guided more by blind compassion than pragmatism and rule of law. It's easy to disagree with Donald Trump's strict and somewhat flippant stance on immigration, and it's also easy to see plenty wrong with some ideas on the other side. But being a country with more migrants than anywhere else in the world at 40 million or 13.6% of the population, you can't just label it all racist and walk away. Yet you see a consistent assertion by Julissa that such a pattern to citizenship would be racist with no real explanation why.
It is a plan that would potentially make 2 million people, who are mostly people of color, have less rights than white citizens. So that is racist.
Okay, so it's racist you come in the country illegally as you did. You have a moral right to let your relatives come too?
Well, first of all, I did not come into the country illegally. Let's get the facts straight. I came to the U.S. on a plane on a tourist visa. So I did not come into this country illegally.
I thought that you overstayed. I'm sorry, I totally misunderstood your bio.
I did overstay my visa, but I did not come into the country illegally.
Oh, you were here illegally. Okay.
Most tourist visas last at most 6 months. Since she was just 11 years old when she came into the United States as a tourist with her parents, as detailed in her memoir, My Underground American Dream, that would mean both her and her parents were in violation of the law the minute the visa expired and then years after it. She's even admitted in a previous conversation with Tucker Carlson to using a fake social security number to get good with the paperwork and documents along her career. Yet it's that same country and system that gave her a chance to rebuild, because Julissa eventually went on to become a citizen herself, have success in the financial sector, and even become the vice president at Goldman Sachs, earning well over $340,000 a year. And yet the country and system that allowed her to do that, it's racist because it doesn't meet the standards on immigration that no other country is held to.
So you're saying that the parents who brought them to this country now have a moral right to become citizens also. And I'm wondering where that right comes from.
Listen, if if I
simple question.
I am now a U.S. citizen, and if I want my mother to be able to come visit me and to be able to come be with me as a United States citizen, I should have that right. You have that right, right? If you had a mother who lived in a different country, you would be able to sponsor her.
So you sneak into the country, you bring your child. That child gets citizenship, and now you have a right to citizenship because you're the one who caused this problem, that parent, in the first place by bringing your child here illegally. But I have to, as a citizen, give you citizenship? How does that work exactly?
The answer is, it doesn't work and it can't work. If a system has been generous enough to give a young person citizenship despite them staying in violation of the law, there's no moral right to then demand your relatives also be made citizens after having overstayed their visas. Now, would that happen in a perfect utopia world? And would it be amazing and nice to move with your entire family everywhere you go? Yes. And there are immigration and legal citizenship paths to follow for that. But does that make a country racist and driven by white supremacy if it doesn't want this uniquely and absurdly high bar for itself? The answer is no. Tucker Carlson would know better because he's been in the firing line for the other side that insists on seeing a race element to his views on immigration, with some even calling him the voice of white America's outrage and fears.
So the ACLU described this as the supposed generosity of giving citizenships to people who are here illegally. Do you think it's generous of the United States to give citizenship to people who came here illegally? Do you think it's generous?
I think that we are trying to talk about two different things. Right?
No, we're trying to talk about. I'm asking you a simple question. Do you think it's generous to give people who are here illegally citizenship?
I don't think that it's generous to separate families and create second-class citizens. No, I don't.
I don't know why we would bring in people who are not grateful for the privilege of being an American citizen. You're definitely in that category, too.
And that's the heart of it for Tucker. If Julissa had made this clear from the beginning, perhaps he'd have a better idea of who he was dealing with. I think it's a mistake not just for her, but for all of us, to believe that our accomplishments and achievements are only ours to claim. They're also credited to the culture and environment we're brought up in and the opportunities that were given to us. If nothing else, perhaps that's what at least deserves a degree of gratitude, and yet there seems to be a strand on the far left of the immigration debate that sees something wrong with borders and boundaries entirely. As something that divides rather than Democrats, Jordan Peterson has spoken about the deeper psychology underneath this political contention several times.
Having some walls was a good idea, like the same as having walls in your house is a good idea. Walls between your rooms are a good idea, or borders between categories are a good idea. And so part of the way you simplify the world is by building walls around your space, because then a whole bunch of things can't come in. And so you don't even have to think about them. It's not conceptual, it's practical. And so, and you know, one of the things I think I figured out recently is the fundamental political difference between people. And it looks to me like the fundamental political difference is how many walls should there be around your stuff? And the ultimate liberal answer is 0.
The moment you don't have a wall, whether physical or conceptual, everything loses its meaning. There's no rules, no sense, no categories, and no country when you aren't allowed to decide what should be allowed to cross them. The fact is, both extremes of the immigration issue are dangerous and should be avoided, but when you're dealing with a debate, it's important to put it into the context of its time. And seeing the border crisis in our South, or the lax immigration policies and loopholes being exploited right now, the least that should be done is to rid the discussion from flippant accusations of racism and opening up the conversation to more.